Hello all, and welcome back to Tangents on Cracked Spines. If you're new here, I'm glad you're here. As a quick intro, I'm Frankie, and we'll be reading with unedited personal commentary on the classics, or in reality, any story in the public domain. This is a special mini-episode, as someone has been requested that I read aloud my script for the wedding ceremony I'm officiating, because most people know the scripts for a traditional Christian or even secular wedding, and I am officiating a pagan one. So, without further ado, here it is. Welcome, friends, family, and loved ones, all who come in peace to witness the union of John Doe and Jane Dale. We are here today to celebrate with them and to share in their triumph as they proclaim their love for one another and the bond their souls have formed together. For those who may not be familiar, a handfasting ceremony is a little different from a traditional wedding ceremony in that it recognizes that love, like life, is dynamic. And I apologize, I'm still dealing with my sinus infection. Traditionally, these ceremonies were done in Celtic lands, and vows could be taken for a year or they could be taken forever, because those Celtic ancestors understood that love changes from moment to moment, and that every couple is unique, as is every relationship. John and Jane have chosen to commit to one another today for the rest of their lives, but they understand that the love they commit to is dynamic and fluid, and what we celebrate is the eternal connection between their souls, no matter what physical form their love may take. Having spent some time with them before agreeing to officiate their hand binding, I've seen the evidence of that connection between these two souls. It's in the way Jane smiles when she sees John come into the room, or when she lights up ever so slightly at the mention of his name. It's the gleam in John's eye when he talks about Jane, or the way he holds her close when they're together. There's no denying that these two souls are connected, and that is what we've gathered to celebrate here in this moment, the love that John and Jane share between their spirits. Obviously, I'm not using the name of the people who I'm actually officiating. And because they are a hetero couple, that's what I'm using this off of. But it could be for any variation thereof of genders. John, Jane, let there be no mistake. While the tradition of hand binding recognizes and accepts love as dynamic in nature, it is not to be entered into lightheartedly, because it is a sacred vow. The vows you make today signify that your souls are bound eternally, whether or not your bodies are. You make these vows today with the understanding that you are committing to be a partner to one another, and to honor the connection your souls now share with one another. These vows are sacred, and they should not be easily broken, as you make them to one another in the sight of these beloved ones as witnesses. Knowing this, John and Jane, is it your intent to enter this commitment to one another? Theoretically, they both say yes. Then let us begin. John and Jane, you will be making 6 vows in total to one another before me and these witnesses. For each, I will ask John for his commitment first, and then I will ask Jane. Once they have both affirmed, we will move to the next vow. John, will you share in Jane's pain and seek to protect her from it and ease her of it? I will. Jane, will you share in John's pain and seek to protect him from it and ease him of it. I will. Then let the binding be so. Another interjection I have here is that this is just one variation of a pagan wedding script. This one I actually smushed two together. I did not write this from scratch. So depending on the flavor of pagan and whether they're doing a hand fasting or something different, there's a lot of different ways the script could play out. This is just the one I worked on with these two people in particular. John, will you share in Jane's joy, rejoice in it with her, and look for the best in her always? I will. Jane, will you share in John's joy, rejoice in it with him, and look for the best in him always? I will. Then let the binding be so. John, will you share in Jane's hardships and toil so that the two of you may grow together? I will. Jane, will you share in John's hardships and toil so that the two of you may grow together? I will. Then let the binding be so. John, will you share in Kim's dreams and work with her to fulfill them? I will. Jane, will you share in John's dreams and work with him to fulfill them? I will. Then let the binding be so. John, will you use your anger to strengthen and temper the bond between you and Kim? I will. Kim. Wow. Jane, will you use your anger to strengthen and temper the bond between you and John? I will. Then let the binding be so. At least from this point on, there's no last names, so you don't necessarily know who I'm talking about. John, will you honor and respect Jane, treating her as an equal in this bond? I will. Jane, will you honor and respect John, treating him as an equal in this bond? I will. Then let the binding be so. It's time to seal your bond with the exchange of rings. The ring has a special significance within many cultures because it is a symbol of unbrokenness. It is also a symbol of completion, as the two of you are now complete. John, please repeat after me. Jane, I promise on this day to share your pain, your joy, your burdens, and your dreams, and to help you navigate the maze of life together as our love grows with us. And he would repeat that. Jane, please repeat after me. John, I promise on this day to share your pain, your joy, your burdens, and your dreams, and to help you navigate the maze of life together as our love grows with us. And theoretically, she repeats that, and they exchange rings. Now to move on to the hand fasting itself. As this knot is tied, so are your spirits now bound. Woven into this cord, into its very fibers, are all the hopes of your friends, family, and of yourselves for your new life together. With the entwining of this knot, do I tie all the desires, dreams, love, and happiness wished here in this place to your lives for as long as love shall last. In the joining of hands and the fashioning of a knot, so are your lives now bound one to another. By this cord you are thus bound to your vow. May this knot remain tied for as long as love shall last. In the name of the ancestors, gods, and goddesses, may this cord draw your hands together in love, never to be used in anger. May the vows you have spoken never grow bitter in your mouth. Now, for those of you that are confused, they did exchange rings, but they are also having a proper hand fasting where their hands are tied together with a cord. The literal tying of a knot. Two entwined in love, bound by commitment and fear, sadness and joy, by hardship and victory, anger and reconciliation, all of which bring strength to this union. Hold tight to one another through both good times and bad, and watch as your strength grows. Remember that it is not this physical cord, but what it represents that keeps you together. John and Jane, having proclaimed the bond of your souls together in the sight of these witnesses, and based on the strength of that bond, and the power vested in me by the Universal Life Church and the state of Maine, I now pronounce you married. Please seal your bond with a kiss. And that's the entirety of the script I have thus far. It'll take a little longer than, 12 minutes, because the pacing will be a little bit slower, and they'll actually have to respond, and exchanging of the rings, and me physically tying a knot around their wrists. But that's the basis of it, and for a hand fasting, there are multiple ways to do it. Some people still only exchange rings, some people only do the binding of the knot, some people bind a knot, and then when they take the knot off, after the ceremony, they, exchange rings then. Some, like in this case, do both within the ceremony. There's variations where swords are presented. There's a bunch of different ways that the knot can physically be tied. So presentation, it's different. So just like any wedding, it's very personal. But that's just a basic script of what a pagan wedding could look like. I hope you enjoyed. And I thank you for listening. And as usual, typical podcast business, if you enjoyed this, please subscribe, rate, review. 5 stars is always appreciated, but just getting any information back, any feedback, helps me improve. And even the most basic, just sharing this with your friends helps me a lot, because it increases my reach. You can always reach out to me via email at talkspod. That's the initials of this podcast, Tangents on Cracked Spines Pod, or phonetically Tango Oscar Charlie Sierra Paris Oscar Delta at gmail.com. On Facebook at Tangents on Cracked Spines Book Club, or with a voice message at anchor.fm/Tangents on Cracked Spines. There is also now a WordPress, which is tangentsonCrackedSpines.wordpress.com. There may be updates on it, but it's mostly just a place where you can listen to all of these podcasts without having to join any of the normal podcast catchers. The Facebook page is generally where I will have my updates and posted polls to vote on the next story, as well as my personal Tumblr, which is NameFlow. And that is spelled November Mike Echo dash flow, as in water flows, on Tumblr. If you are interested in merch, I do have a few shirts and things in my Etsy shop, which I will link in the description. Thank you all for listening again, and have a wonderful day. I hope this was vaguely educational.